Before I welcome our guest speakers today, I'd like to provide some context for the discussion that we're going to have today. So the Chamber recently began hearing from the business community that homelessness was having an impact on their businesses. So a membership survey was conducted to determine the nature and the extent of the impact. Respondents reported incidents of harassment of employees and customers, property damage and theft, trash, human waste, and biohazards were left on the properties. As a result, many businesses have had to adjust their business operations, including moving their businesses out of the affected areas, erecting fences, and making additional investments in security equipment. Beyond the direct costs, this impacts property values and makes it more difficult to hire and retain a qualified workforce. The survey responses also raised some other concerns, such as violent crime, the fentanyl epidemic, gang activity, and sex trafficking. So we reached out to our 4 police chiefs and invited them here to talk about public safety, and we're really glad they were all able to accept the invitation. So I'm going to introduce each police chief and ask him to join me on stage, and then we'll get started. First, Chris Guerrero has been with the Kennewick Police Department since January of 1996 and was promoted to chief in March of 2022. Throughout his career, Chief Guerrero served on the SWAT team as an FBI Safe Streets Task Force Sergeant, an assistant chief of police, and many other law enforcement duties. Chief Guerrero has a bachelor's degree from WSU and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Chief Guerrero, so please help me welcome Kennewick Police Chief Chris Guerrero. Next is Ken Roski, who's the police chief of the Pasco Police Department, and he's been a police officer with that department for 36 years. He's had a wide range of experience before being promoted to captain, overseeing field operations, support operations, training division before becoming the deputy chief. In 2019, he was appointed police chief and is the first police chief to rise through the ranks in the past 50 years. Chief Roski holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice management and a master's degree in organizational leadership. He's a 2004 graduate of the FBI National Academy. Additionally, he holds certifications from the Washington State Training Commission on Police Standards, the California Police Chiefs Association, and the Drucker School of Management. Please help me welcome Pasco Police Chief Ken Roski. Bridget Clary was appointed Richland Police Chief in January of 2022. Chief Clary is the first female police officer in the Tri-Cities region and is the first internally promoted police chief in Richland in over 20 years. Chief Clary began her law enforcement career in 1998. She came to Richland in 2017 from the Federal Way Police Department, where she was serving as a detective lieutenant. Bringing her leadership and expertise to Richland, Chief Clary was promoted from sergeant to lieutenant and then to captain. She spent time supervising operations, administrative services, and investigations. In 2021, she was promoted to deputy chief, overseeing all internal operations. Chief Clary has a bachelor's degree in law and justice and sociology from Central Washington University. She's a graduate of the FBI LEDA Trilogy Series and holds an executive career level certification from the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. Please help me welcoming Richland Police Chief Bridget Clary. And finally, Thomas Grego has worked for over 24 years as a police officer, with 23 of those years in West Richland. He was appointed police chief in May of 2022. During his career, he's held numerous positions, including captain, SWAT team commander, narcotics detective, and more. Chief Grego is a graduate of Liberty University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and business. Chief Grego is a retired Army veteran, serving over 20 years in both active duty and reserve. He's received over 25 medals for his service and is a recipient of the Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan in 2008. Please help me welcome West Richland Police Chief Thomas Grego. Okay, so we want this program to be as interactive as possible. So we'll be asking each police chief for a short public safety brief, which will be followed by questions on a variety of topics. We'll close out the program with questions from the audience and then give the chiefs a chance to share any final thoughts. So let's get started. Looking through some of your annual reports, some were up to 40 pages or more. I know that any of you could easily fill all the time we have allotted with kind of what's been going on in your departments and your communities. But if you could boil it down to 2 minutes, I'd like each of you to give us just a 2-minute public safety brief on what's going on in your areas. Let's start with Kennewick.
All right, thank you, Jim. First off, I have to thank the Chamber for allowing us to be here. What you'll see today is we will try to keep this thing very light. We all get along very, very well, and don't be surprised if you see some friendly banter back and forth, because it's been occurring since we got here. As you can see, I'm in the long sleeve because I swore he was going to wear a long sleeve. I didn't wear my shiny shoes because I knew Bridget was going to wear boots. So this is how this goes sometimes. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity, again, to the Chamber and really the community. Policing is not something that happens to the community, it happens with the community. So us being able to be here and speak in front of everybody is exactly what we like to do, what we want to do, and what we should do. Kennewick, we've had a busy year. Kennewick's always been busy, but over the last year, it just feels like, and maybe it's just because being a new chief, you feel it a little bit different, but I think through COVID, through legislative things, through all kinds of stuff, we've seen some increase in crime, which I think a lot of people have felt. We've seen some increase in social needs, including those who are unhoused. We've seen narcotics issues. We've seen an uptick in gang activity. Last year, we saw about a 30% increase in crime in Kennewick. This year, that number has dropped. We are seeing about a 16% decrease in crime. Violent crime is down over 30%. And a lot of it has to do with the men and women of our agency, as well as the support of our council and our city manager, who are put in place by the community. So I would be the first to say that it's not something we do alone. We're very fortunate in the Tri-Cities that policing in Kennewick has everything to do with policing in Pasco, has everything to do with policing in Richland. We all have to do this together, and we do a very good job at doing that. So I don't want to take up too much time because we want to answer questions, but there you go for Kennewick.
Thanks, Chief Guerrero, for that wonderful introduction and taking most of our time, so I'll try and keep mine short, but that's wonderful. No, thank you, Chamber, for inviting us. Thanks, Jim, for hosting this. And it's a great opportunity to spend some time with our business partners and our community that's out there. And the successes that we see in the Metro Tri-City area are because we have support that is out there. For Pasco, we are working through much of the challenges with crime rates that Chief Guerrero spoke of, as well as the continued growth that Pasco is experiencing. I know the Tri-Cities is as well, but specifically for Pasco, our growth and our being prepared for what that future is going to look like as we see a continued increase in population and businesses coming into Pasco. We were fortunate to complete a strategic plan that was adopted by our city council, and we use that strategic plan to help us identify additional resources that is going to help plan us for the future with crime prevention, apprehending criminals, and ensuring public safety. Our council was very supportive in authorizing 12 additional police officers for the city of Pasco. I think council would have given us whatever we asked for, but literally there's such a hiring, training curve to combat, to bringing new officers on, that 12 is a lot for an agency our size to handle. But we have great staff, and we're prepared to bring those officers on and deploy a new policing model that will go out into the community starting in January, where we'll have districts and we'll have lieutenants in charge of those districts, much more responsive to businesses in the community and taking problems that we have and focusing our resources at those problems rather than just haphazardly. In Pasco, our policing model literally hasn't changed in the 36 years that I have been there. We are deploying our resources virtually the same way as we did. So we've re-examined that, used our strategic plan, built some programs in place that I think is going to set us up for the future. So that's kind of a quick lay of the land for Pasco.
Hello. Well, I thought Chief Roski said he was going to be brief, so I guess I really don't have any time now. As the two chiefs, reference, we are so fortunate in this area to have such a great business community and community altogether. Having spent most of my policing career on the west side, don't judge me for it, I feel like I have a unique perspective coming over here, and I was telling somebody else before the lunch that I don't think I'll ever take Tri-Cities for granted and the community for granted, the support that we have, and really the relationship and the trust that we enjoy. And so I'm really at Richland, and I know all the agencies were very committed to maintaining that trust, and we all feel very strongly, it's a new era in policing. We certainly can't do this alone, and we really do our job at the community's pleasure. So we really do need your input. Recently in Richland, we do the command team does a business walk where we go out and meet with business owners and business managers in our community to see how things are going, how we can serve them better. Businesses really are what makes a city vibrant and encourages, tourism to come in, and you just can't have a city without strong businesses, a healthy city anyway. So we really, we work on that. We feel strongly that we want to keep Tri-Cities, the Tri-Cities. We talk about rising crime rates here, which they have over the last couple of years. But they are trending down, but we do enjoy overall a low crime in our community, which I think is important to remember. And as chiefs, we do, I think, we worry and we fret and we look at statistics and about the victims, which we always will, but it's important to remember that we really do enjoy a safe community. So in Richland, we've been focusing a lot on our recruitment and retention. We've implemented some wellness programs for our officers. I believe strongly that happy officers are healthy and effective officers and engage well with our community, the happier they are. We've tried to develop new programs to keep our officers keep our officers here in this area. It is a very competitive market, so that's part of our recruiting strategies. And focusing on, see?
Really?
And time's up. All right.
I'm the
There you go,
least
sir.
talkative out of all of them. I'll turn it over.
No, I agree with the chiefs, and thank you for having us today. So there's numerous, I guess, directions that I look at when it comes to the issues and the way the laws have changed in the last few years. Overdoses up. Obviously, Narcan came into play. Those are hurdles for us as departments. We do have Narcan in the region. I know lots of lives have been saved. I think that for West Richland, for myself, that I wanted to make sure that our officers have all the tools they need out there on the street. And I've really tried to focus on that along with the officer wellness, because as all this changed, there's more requirements coming down on us to make sure our officers are trained, so much higher. Not that I think that we're trained at a low level. There's more expectations. So it is one of our hurdles, I guess, at the chief level to make sure all that's going on, as well as fighting the crime, taking care of all that, the community with everything that's going on, keeping up the partnerships. But there's one thing I want to say before I end my statement is our partnership in the region is solid. I've come through the ranks, as you heard in my introduction. I've seen what the Tri-Cities looked like many years ago as far as the law enforcement community. And West Richland is truly plugged into the region, and I know that when I need help, they all come running. Then their teams come running, and we do the same thing for them. So I just want to let everybody know and emphasize that, how awesome I think that relationship is.
That's great, thank you. And I remember I was sharing a story with you guys a little earlier. I was out of town when a major crime incident was happening in the Tri-Cities, and my family cued me into something was going on. I dialed into a police scanner, and what you're saying is what I observed is that it was going on in Richland, and there was all the departments and everybody was really all hands on deck dealing with that issue. So thank you for that, and I know that's in our region. That's super critical that that we really work together as a region. So thank you for that. So let's start out with a topic of homelessness. Certainly a complex issue with a number of contributing forces at play, such as mental health, drug abuse, housing costs, and availability. And there are many focused on the issues, both public and private, and all have a variety of strategies. So a question for all four of you. In light of the responses to the Chamber's homelessness survey, what is your department's approach to the issue? And can you share some strategies or initiatives that you use to address the issue of homelessness in your community? Let's start with Kennewick.
All right, thank you. So very complex issue. I wish there was a location that has it figured out, because it's a national problem that everybody's struggling with. We've done several different things. Probably the biggest thing we've done lately is on Thursdays we send out an officer who is working with someone from Comprehensive Health who provides mental health services, someone from Three Rivers Therapy, which provides substance use disorder services, and then someone from Benton Franklin Health and Human Services, and then our officer. Our officer's not in uniform. He is dressed down, and they go out and contact as many unhoused individuals as they can. They provide every service available, and food, housing, clothing, all of those different things, and have been doing it since about November of last year. So we're reaching out, trying to provide opportunities for folks. We've been very fortunate. There are some individuals that we've dealt with for years that I dealt with when I was a patrol officer in the early 2000s, and they have accepted housing. We've had great opportunities to get them the help they need. Now, does everybody accept help? No. We're recontacting many of the same people week in and week out. Some other things we're doing is we're working with the businesses along the Clearwater area, along Kennewick Avenue, and having them provide us with trespass authorizations. A lot of people are feeling uncomfortable walking in and out of businesses, right? A lot of the businesses are having struggles with people coming in and using the restrooms, right? We've had overdoses in the restrooms. Well, sometimes we have to be called to be able to come and do something about it. So we offer the authority for them to provide us trespass authorization. That gives us a tool. Does that mean we're going to arrest everybody all the time? It does not. But the main message we continually share is, please call us. The community is the force multiplier for us. People don't want to bother us because they think we're too busy. We need the community to get engaged and to call. Let us come out and deal with things, right? It's going to get prioritized, but let us be involved in that. That's really what we want to do. It is that partnership. We can make it better, but we need the community's involvement with it.
So not to repeat what Chief Guerrero's efforts are, we're mirroring those in Pasco, recognizing the challenges that are set down. Nobody wants people to go to jail for being homeless or having to live on the streets. That's not our first effort, is to get resources to them. All the chiefs are going to tell you the same thing. That's what our officers' very first goal is, to get them the resources. It takes many efforts. One study I recently read, it takes 17 to 20 contacts by law enforcement, referrals, before somebody will take one step at getting help. So you can just understand the amount of commitment level from our officers in the field. But at the end of the day, you have businesses, you have homes that you need people to come to, and there are things that are disorderly, that unfortunately law enforcement has to step in, and we will make those arrests when we have to. Regardless of all of the efforts, when people don't want to get help, that's sometimes where law enforcement ends up being the answer to your story. But to Chief Guerrero's points, call us and trust us. We want to get them the services, but not everybody accepts those.
I don't know if I'm enjoying going third.
Ditto.
So we're all doing a lot of the same things. It's important, to remember that the landscape has changed in 2018. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Martin versus Boise decision came out, and that affected our ability to enforce crimes directly associated with homelessness. So our job is different now. I don't think we feel any different. We always wanted people who are affected by drug addiction and homelessness to get services, and that's something that we've always done and made referrals for those. But sometimes in the end, like the chief said, we are law enforcement, so that's what we do. And sometimes by making an arrest, a person will then get those services. I've talked to many people throughout my career who come back to me afterwards and will say, I was able to get help in jail for my addiction, or I was able to get placed into housing after being booked into jail because there are those services there. But of course, we want to try and address those beforehand, which we do. In Richland, we do a coordinated effort targeting homelessness and helping people get resources within the city departments. We have code enforcement within the police department at Richland, and then we have the park ranger and parks, and we utilize the fire marshal and fire and the resource navigator there. And so typically you'll see a team of 4 or 5 people throughout all different departments in the city will go out and make contact at a homeless camp and offer resources, and then offer to put those resources in place at the time. And we have found good results with that. Our officers are also very familiar with the resources to offer. And like the chief referenced, a lot of time, it takes us many, many times to get people to accept resources. So it truly is, it's not a question that's answered easily, and it's definitely takes a multidisciplinary approach.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, because I agree with everything they're saying, I don't have the teams like that going out, but our officers do have the resources at their fingertips. Some of the frustration I think that has happened over time is, when these people the homeless sometimes are committing the crimes at the business or whatever, they have to step in. And I think that it's being treated with more kid gloves to try to get them the help without having to make that arrest necessarily until it's too late. Now we got to make the arrest. So it's a challenge for our officers on the street. It's not something where you just go walk in and, all right, that's it, we're done. And so anyway, I just want to share that. We try our best to keep that balance going. So
That's great, thank you. Now, for the businesses, aside from relocating out of an affected area, and I heard mentioned several times making sure that we call upon your departments for help, is there any other specific things that businesses can do, or maybe you see a lack of things that businesses are doing to kind of help be a first line?
Can I start this one? All right, here we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm helping us out, come on. I'll just ask you to work with law enforcement. Believe it or not, there are some businesses that the team have run into that they don't cooperate with us, but yet they want us to fix the problems. And we're like, we need the cooperation, we need that partnership in order to get to the bottom result here. And that's obviously community safety and everything else. So not all businesses are like that, I'm not saying that, but we've had a few in West Richland that I'm like going, they won't work with you, all right? Anyway, so we just work with your law enforcement, please. It helps us out, and our intent is not necessarily throwing everybody in jail.
I'm all off my game now by the change in order, but I'm never happy. See the city manager over there nodding his head? So first of all, it is important, and part of the reason why we go out on the business walks in Richland is to communicate with business owners and managers to see what their problems are, what their needs are from us. We have a community relations specialist, also a civilian position, that will go out and talk to businesses and provide feedback on how they can secure their businesses with either their lighting or if it's the landscaping around the business, to deter basically people setting up on their front access or their sidewalks. And also in Richland, we have an ordinance, a pretty aggressive anti-camping ordinance that allows us to take enforcement action on city properties. So that's helpful for us. It helps us when we have the authority to have the conversation, to ask somebody to move. That's very helpful to us. But also to call. I hear from so many upstanding members of the community, I didn't want to call and bother you. You guys are so busy. Please call. We want you to call. That's what we're here for. And it helps us. We do a lot with crime analysis. So we track a lot of things through complaints on certain topics, whether it be speeding or trespassing. And that really helps us, because there's much less of us than there are of you. It helps us focus our enforcement efforts where they need to be. So please call. And I would encourage businesses to have the conversation with the person that's there if you feel comfortable with that. A lot of times if resources are offered from within the community, that's received sometimes better than it is from the police. So we encourage you to do that too, and our officers are more than willing to help give the businesses those resources and educate business owners on what those resources are.
So quickly, the metropolitan area, both counties, is so giving. There are so many great organizations out there that want to provide services. Please don't allow people loitering on your properties. Please don't try and get into that business. Let the professional organizations that want to provide the services do that. Get with your law enforcement organizations. Design your properties with crime prevention in mind. Pasco will send an officer out to survey your property with you and do a SEPTED survey where they can look over that property and give you suggestions and ideas where to trim bushes back, where not to have places for people to loiter and hang out. So it's interactive in that we need you to be progressive in preventing those people that would just want to loiter and hang around on your properties. You have control over that.
SEPTED is crime prevention through environmental design. We'll use acronyms sometimes, and we've got to help each other remember that, not to do that. Our city has a resource page. A lot of the resources are on there. If you go to kennewick.com, you can see some resources there that you can provide folks as well.
Great. Thank you all. So we're going to shift gears a little bit away from homelessness now. And Chief Guerrero, you mentioned violent crime a little earlier, and Chief Clary talked about trend analysis. So this next question, in the past several years, there seems to be growing reports of violent crime in the area. And growing up here, I don't recall even that really hitting my awareness. So has there really been a violent crime in the region? And if so, is it simply because the area is larger now and there's more population, or are there other factors at play?
Yes, no, and yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next.
No, there has been a rise in crime, like I said earlier. I think there's lots of reasons to it. I think everybody would agree that COVID had an impact on society as a whole. And that's one piece to it. Some legislative things pulled police back. Everybody's heard that from us. But at the end of the day, that's not an excuse for a lack of policing. That is not, any of us will not tell you that there is a national narrative. I hear Chief Roski talk about the national rhetoric around bad policing. There are bad cops out there. What we all got out of the George Floyd, the police reform, was, hey, we might need to do things a little bit better, right? We need to hire the best and brightest. We need to continue to look for those folks. It's harder now than ever to find them, but we're finding them. And so a lot of juvenile crime, the majority of those housed at juvenile justice are in there for murder. There are a lot of the ones that are out there committing the crimes. We had 11 homicides in Kennewick last year. I don't know that we've ever had that many in the history of our city. Thankfully, we've solved all of them. We have 100% clearance rate on them. But to answer the question, yes, violent crime is up. It's down, like I said, 30% now in Kennewick. We implemented a crime fighting strategy using crime analysis to determine our hot spots and then have specific teams that are going out and addressing that. But it is a thing, but we're starting to see that decline, right? That pendulum is starting to swing back, and it's because of supportive communities, great support from council.
Yeah, you want me to answer that too, or?
If you have a response, absolutely.
I think society has wanted to try different experiments with not incarcerating people, getting the justice system out of a lot of things for a while. The anti-police rhetoric, kind of COVID, a lot of that allowed for our legislature anyways to take a hands-off approach legally and try some things. It didn't work. That's not the only answer. If we had the answer, we probably wouldn't be sitting up here. We'd be fixing it. But I'm encouraged by what we have in front of us. I'm encouraged by recent legislation that was passed. We can talk about that. Does it go far enough? Does it not go far enough? But at least we're starting to get back into the realm of holding people accountable for laws and rules in our society and trying to get control of that. We are seeing decline in crime overall. Whether that continues to drop, I don't know. But there's a lot of theories about why it spiked in 2022. But we're committed to ride it out and keep pushing that down in all of our metro area cities. So not just Pasco, everybody's committed to that.
One thing too, sorry. My bad. Okay. We have to give thanks to, I know we talk about the West Side and legislators and all of that. I've done several public talks, and as this session occurred, I continually watched where our legislators sat on things. They fell right in line with what our communities want, every single one of them. So Representative Barnard, all of the local 16th, 8th, they were very supportive. Our local elected officials have been very supportive of all of us. So we typically would say, contact your legislators. That's not the case. They're doing everything we could ask them to do. So I think it's important to say that, even at the local city government. I know our mayor was sending letters and trying, and so our region does a great job.
That's good. Thank you. Did you have something to add?
Is it okay?
Please.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I think that it's all pretty much been said, but I agree with Chief Guerrero that we are so fortunate here to have the support of our city council that has communicated with the legislature, and for our elected representatives. We're very fortunate here. I think, this is the only place to be for law enforcement in the state. This is the place to be. But I think we would be remiss in not at least addressing how we got to this point. There were multiple court decisions, the Martin decision affecting homelessness, the Blake decision effectively legalizing drugs, and then our legislative reform package. And we all saw the result, and it didn't work out well. There's a lot of collateral damage to that, a lot of unintended consequences. But thankfully, we are coming back from that. In Richland, we have been focusing a lot on getting back to proactive policing, which I know that all of us sitting here feel very strongly about proactive policing and strong law enforcement services. That is what we do best. So I think that's how we kind of take it back and keep Tri-Cities, do what we can to keep Tri-Cities great like it is. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. So I was in a meeting with a few other chamber members, about 10 of us, a couple of weeks ago. And within that meeting, there were two people who had had cars stolen recently, one in rather spectacular fashion that was all over the newspapers. And I know gang activity has been an issue in the area. It's nexus in crime and drugs and things like that. Now, I know there's a Tri-Cities Metro Drug Task Force, but is there a similar cooperative organization that really is focused on the gang problem, or how is that being addressed in the area? And I'll open up to anybody.
I think our drug task force, all of our federal task forces that we all have people on, our street crimes units, they all collaborate together to use our crime analysts to identify known gang members, crime trends and where those are occurring, and then we can put our individual resources collaboratively together combating whether that's gang activity or not. It happened to have been on a rise, largely narcotics driven. There's some other factors, but largely narcotics driven. So as we put our efforts towards back into narcotics enforcement and stuff, hopefully we're going to start seeing that decline. But together, all of us have resources with individual or agencies that we're putting together, not in a formalized drug task force like you see, but they all have an aspect at tackling the gang problem in the area.
And I'd say that the communication between agencies obviously is funneled through that group regionally. So we have a Metro detective also, and it's imperative that we keep that communication going, because when Kennewick has something going on, we need to know to keep an eye out for things too. And that interaction, I talked about that relationship earlier, that partnership, brings it all together for us as a region.
So I know fentanyl has been an epidemic in many communities. What's going on in the Tri-Cities, and what are you seeing with the fentanyl problem?
Overdose. I talked about it when I started. I'm not joking around. I tell people this all the time, and I'd imagine some of these chiefs would say the same thing. When I first started my career, an overdose was rare to hear on the radio. It just was. Now I almost hear it every day. And it's amazing to me how much, and it's fentanyl. I know there's other drugs that have overdose, but fentanyl is number one. And it's just amazing how much it has impacted our community. And unfortunately, those users of fentanyl also don't have jobs and they can't hold down jobs. So now they're stealing and they're doing all this stuff, theft of vehicles, to make more money to feed their habits. So it has had a real negative impact on our community.
Yeah, so overdoses in Pasco, the fatal overdoses are actually down slightly this year. Overdoses are up. Thankfully, our officers are better at saving, our medics are better at saving overdose victims with Narcan and other resources. We just had 2 saves last weekend. I'll bet every one of these chiefs could give you a very recent example of a save. But narcotics is a problem in our society. You watch the zombies walking around. We had 2 years of virtually the Blake decision, which legalized it. Come August, thanks to some strong legislators, we're going to have some law enforcement resources that we can put back into that. And if we can get them help, if we can get them resources for their drug addiction, just like with homelessness, that's exactly what we want. We're offering those services to them. But we know from our experience up here, and after watching the last 2 years, I can now point back to the examples over and over again. It often takes the criminal justice system getting in the middle to force people into getting help. If not, at least we're holding them accountable for drug problems that result from their addiction. So fentanyl is the most recent result. There will be something coming right behind it. The drug cartel is not going to lose money. They'll find a way to make money. So there will be something else after this.
I have to plug the Recovery Center. For those who don't know, what we have in the Tri-Cities is jail. That is our option right now. We do not have a detox center. We do not have any type of place to take somebody who's suffering from behavioral health issues, whether it's mental health or substance use disorder. So the support for the Recovery Center is very, very important. Both counties have been supportive. All of the cities have been supportive. The sheriffs, I know they're not up here, they're very supportive and collaborative with all of this. So the Recovery Center is something that's needed. So please, if you have the opportunity to support that, please do. That is a tremendous help for law enforcement.
I just wanted to add one thing. I'll share a personal thing. So my little brother overdosed in 2006. He passed away. And there wasn't, he didn't have law enforcement contact. And I truly believe, I can't change the past, but had maybe law enforcement caught him along the way, it might have changed his story. But anyway, just want to add that in.
No, thank you. And Chief Guerrero, thank you for bringing up the Recovery Center. That was my next question. And it was really surrounded about what kind of impact do you see on your caseload throughout the Tri-Cities? Will it be enough, and what challenges do you see remaining?
Yeah, I may have cheated and looked at your notes, but it will be tremendous. And I think the plan that they're looking at would be a 10-minute stop for law enforcement. It gives us another opportunity, another tool, because believe it or not, as everybody has said, jail is needed. There are people who need to be incarcerated and held accountable for victimizing folks. But shouldn't be the only option. And there's many officers out there who would rather take somebody to a recovery center than taking them to jail. Does that mean they won't get prosecuted? No, that doesn't mean that. There's still a venue for that. But the recovery center is something that, I just left a meeting prior to coming here with Representative Newhouse, Congressman Newhouse, on the fentanyl problem. And these are the exact same things we're talking about. There was somebody in the meeting from north of here, and they said, all they have is Spokane or Wenatchee to take somebody to. We don't even we're in the same boat. We don't have that. So to be able to have that, it would be a game changer for our region. And yeah,
And
you bet.
I've heard a lot from parents along the way that are running into this with their sons and daughters and stuff. And that's exactly the problem, is there's nothing right here. They would have to reach out to Spokane or different locations. So it's going to be great that we have something here finally.
I just wanted to add that I fully support it. In a previous jurisdiction I worked for, we had a similar place where we could drop people off, and just like the chief said, there's lots of people who we do not want to arrest. We don't think it's the best thing for them, and if we had a secure facility to utilize, it would be utilized by law enforcement. So I've seen it work before, and I think it's just important to remember it's going to take collaboration of all of us. It's not just law enforcement, it's not just social services, it's not just the businesses. It's going to take a lot of communication and input by everybody, and I know that we're all committed to that.
Workforce development, workforce management is an issue across many industries. In fact, virtually everybody here today. As we were chatting before the lunch started, we were talking a little bit about that, and I'd like to ask Chief Grego and Chief Clary to talk about workforce in your departments, and how are you finding people? Are you finding the right kinds of people, and how do you keep them engaged?
So last year when I got promoted, the chief had retired, the lieutenant retired, we already had positions open, and so I guess I just started trying to think outside the box and taking some of the advice from what I was hearing from other agencies. But some of the things that West Richland did, because we didn't have those full-time positions filled, I had budget money in the labor budget. So I went to the mayor and asked for permission to give sign-on bonuses. I asked for a $2,000 bonus for our police department to give to any employee of West Richland, not just the police department, that bring in laterals and recruit. So we made everybody a recruiter in the city. If you're trying to bring in laterals and quality laterals, because I got to tell you, I washed quite a few laterals. They lose things if they come from one agency to another, and that, like their vacation bank. They've been there for a few years, they have vacation, so we said, why don't we give them 80 hours of their vacation, it's called PTO in West, right off the bat, first day, give them that type of stuff, moving money that if they had to move from the area, move into the Tri-Cities. And so we were throwing a lot of stuff at, but I don't think that there was necessarily any solution. And right now, I'm fortunate to say that we're fully staffed. And I've been saying it for a few months because we've been fully staffed for a few months. And I'm not bragging, I just think that the efforts of the team and everybody else trying to recruit helped us out a lot. The culture in our law enforcement, I believe, is a big deal. Wellness is a big part of West Richland Police Department, and we brought in I believe it was the first therapy dog for law enforcement, Polar. He's pretty amazing. But focusing more on the officers and stuff, and I think that attracted people. I started changing some of the norm of no shave in uniform, that type of stuff, because that's the world I came from. I decided to go ahead and do a beard policy that limited their beard to a certain look, and believe it or not, that attracted a couple of individuals that made the difference of them putting the application in, believe it or not. but I think it's just thinking outside the box. So that's was successful for me, and it was a package deal. It wasn't just one thing, I believe. I think it was trying to figure out what officers are really wanting to get into these days.
So we allow beards at Richland too, but I'm not sure how that benefits me, but so that's all right. So first, when I was first appointed as chief, we had quite a few vacancies, and coming off of the legislative reforms, we all experienced, I think, some morale issues. So we really focused inward with our succession planning and our wellness efforts. We secured a large grant from the Criminal Justice Training Commission for wellness, and we were able to attach a psychologist to our peer support program. We have a very robust peer support program that allows our officers to discuss things and talk about things. And really the idea is that we want officers to have a long and healthy career, and when they retire, to be healthy beyond that. So first, and as I mentioned before, happy cops give better service to the community. So it really benefits everybody all around. And then council and city manager I was fortunate that they were supportive in granting us 5 new positions, which came with the challenge of trying to fill those positions. So we looked at all of our processes and tried to, we looked at fire had just changed their processes. We looked at wherever we could take time out of. It is about a 6-month process to hire a cop. It's expensive. I think a lot of people don't realize kind of the sausage grinder that it is to get hired, and the background polygraph and psychological tests, physical tests. It's very rigorous. So we streamlined that as much as we could, but we made a commitment not to ever change our standards. We do enjoy a high standard of competency here in the Tri-Cities. I think we have great cops, the best that I've ever seen or worked with here. And that I think our relationships here are a tribute to that. And then we implemented some programs internally for our officers and to provide better service to the community. We passed a package for recruiting, giving bonuses for referrals, vacation hours for laterals, and a lot of different things to try and make our department stand out. It's kind of hard. Everybody's competing for the same candidates. But we committed also to not trying to steal candidates, to keep our relationships good. We definitely don't do that here. So I think that's also helped. And we've done some unorthodox things also with recruiting through some TV stations, getting social media, all of those platforms that people that are my age don't pay any attention to try and reach that demographic. So I think all of us here have been trying to be as creative as we can.
I have to say something. Sorry. Believe it or not.
It's the beard policy, isn't it?
Yeah, I learned from Chief Hohenberg, right? And the guy, if anybody knew, he can talk. So I have to give a plug to Chief Roski. I think a big recruiting thing that benefited our region was he fought for a regional academy here in Pasco, the first regional academy in the state. So we have a police academy running in Pasco right now, where before we would have to send them to Burien or Spokane. And the ability to recruit your local community members was huge, and that was much of the platform he sold this to, with the support of our legislature. Yeah, they did that one right. They really helped us out there. And yeah. But Chief Roski and his staff from Pasco were the driving force behind it. He'll tell you he needed all of us to be part of it and all of that, but without his work on it, it wouldn't have happened. We have 10 officers in that academy, so it's been a huge benefit to us, but there are local people, right? So you have your community policing your community, which is exactly was his argument. So kudos to Chief Roski for that.
Wow, well done, well done. So I want to get to questions from the audience, but before we do, just really quickly, for each of you, what do you see as the biggest challenge for your department today?
I'm going to say the growth. in West Richland for me. Just, you know, there's a lot of things, but I would say right now the growth, unfortunately, West Richland doesn't have a huge revenue base. So I'm trying to get really creative with trying to figure out how I'm going to put more officers on the street, because right now, I'll go ahead and say this, it wasn't my intro, but I didn't read it. Washington State's at the lowest in the U.S. at 1.38 officers per 1,000. West is at 1.25, and right now, and we're below that standard. So the statement of we are the least police state in the U.S. is a true statement, but in West, we're even lower than that. So that's one of my biggest things, to make sure I have the officers out there on the street to take care of all these other things that these guys are working on that I don't have.
I totally agree that the biggest thing is managing growth. The secret's out that the Tri-Cities is a great place to be, unfortunately, or fortunately. So managing, you know, the skyrocketing population along with some big city crime that's come over here, and, you know, staffing, I think it all goes together, but, you know, having the Tri-Cities kind of growing into itself, and it's definitely, I think, in a growth and transition phase right now.
Yeah, I think planning and preparing for the future, we know that what we did 5 years, 20 years ago, 3 decades ago is not going to work into policing the future of our communities for a whole host of reasons. So I think our challenges that all of us have, definitely in Pasco, is identifying and planning and preparing for the future. What's next year look like? What's 5 year look like? And how do we prepare our council, who has been very, very supportive of what we are doing, and ensuring that our plans into the future give them the confidence that their police are ready for growth, legislative changes, social issues, whatever it might be that comes down the pike, that their police department is ready to police their communities and protect the vulnerable from harm. So I think that's Pasco's.
I would agree.
Great. Thank you. So really, thank you for the discussion. In advance of the lunch, the chiefs made it really clear to me that one of the most important things to them was hearing from all of you. So we have a microphone that will go around, and if you have a question, please raise your hand, wait for the microphone, and then address the chiefs with whatever question you might have.
As you can tell, we could sit up here and talk all day long and have no problem doing it. So
when I read the paper or any other form, it seems as though juveniles are making a very large dent in the crime rate. Is that primarily due to the change in law that you can't talk to the juveniles now? And how big of an increase has it been since that law changed, if you know?
I can answer him all the time. So if one of you want to.
I don't know what the percentage increase is. The law is definitely a factor. But you also, I think, have to attribute that to the robust increase in 2022 that we saw in crime, what was going on in the country, and juveniles just get wrapped up into it. Absolutely, the inability to talk to juveniles has much more detrimental impact than the crime rate that I think it has potentially driven. It's the opportunity to keep juveniles out of trouble that shouldn't be in it. And they get wrapped up in the justice system when all we had to do was potentially talk to them and excuse them from being involved. Now they're wrapped up whether we want them to be or not.
So for some explanation, for those who don't know, there's legislation in place that presumes a juvenile has the right to an attorney before we can even ask. And you as parents cannot invoke the right for them to speak on their behalf. So they're afforded an automatic right to an attorney. So we have to call an attorney before we can even attempt to speak to them. That's what the mayor was referring to.
And on that means that we can't get exculpatory information from the juvenile, where if they're a suspect in any way and we talk to them, and a lot of times they can explain how they were involved and give us information to help us with the crime. Now they're not even allowed to do that. So it is problematic, but I think it's important to recognize too, with the increase in gang activity that we've been seeing, some coming from the Yakima area, that gang members and those criminal enterprises, they do use juveniles to commit their crimes. That's just what happens, and a lot of times they're generational in the street gangs. So they know that these juveniles will receive a light sentence or probation, and now we can't even talk to them. So we've unknowingly encouraged this to continue.
We started going out and providing identified juvenile gang members, going to their home, providing them with the support of our city attorney, their parents, a failure to supervise information and how to get their child some help. But in the event they don't supervise their child, we will charge them with a crime. So putting some responsibility back onto the parents.
Chiefs, I tend to compare our regional policing model to Vancouver, Washington, where I lived for over a decade, and we're growing to about that size. Two-part question. One is, Chief Morey over there is dealing with improving the diversity of his staff to reflect the community, and you touched on a little bit of how your hiring practices are, Chief Grego. But what are each of you doing to address that as part of your hiring model? And then two, tangentially, you mentioned analytics. What are you doing to enhance or expand your analytical tools for better policing, for more surgical policing to improve our communities?
Sounds like a Hewlett-Packard question.
I think that West Richland's pretty diverse right now. 22 full-time officers, and I have 3 female officers. One's a sergeant. That's pretty, I think we had 1 female officer in West Richland when I first got hired. As far as different, backgrounds or whatever, we have across the board of different type of culture and stuff in our department. I think that the focus on recruiting, I look at just quality candidates. When I talked about the hiring process, I talked about laterals. So it was male, female, it didn't matter who was applying. We were just making sure they were qualified candidates. So I know that at one time we were trying to recruit females specifically, and they say, well, did you drop standards? Of course not. We kept the standards going. But we're diverse right now, and I think that that's kind of the testament of what we're talking about with the regional academy and everything else. We're just hiring people. There is no there's no screening because of male, female, or any of that going on. So we're hiring our community.
I'll speak to that real quick. So Richland, we're a part of the 30 by 30 initiative, which is 30% of female officers by 2030, which it really is, it's not a commitment or a contract to attain that, but it's more importantly to put it out there. We want you to apply. We want to have people who are policing who look like the members of our community. We've hired recently more female officers also. But I think it's more importantly, and I think I can in my position to say that the most important is for us to have the most highly qualified candidates, period. That's the #1 consideration. Of course, we want all qualified applicants to feel free to apply, and I know that all the agencies here feel that way. And to just give Chief Roski a plug here for the Academy, and he has spoken about this before, that having the Academy here where people can commute and go home at night allows us that opportunity where when I got hired, I had a 6-month baby at home. If I couldn't have commuted, I went to the Burien Academy. If I couldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been able to come over to the Tri-Cities. I wouldn't have been willing to leave my baby at home and not be able to spend time with my family. And we have migrant workers in the area who are the caretakers for their family. They can't leave, they have responsibilities. I did chief's interviews on some candidates this week where one is a young man who's in charge of his 13-year-old sister because his parents moved out of the country. So things like that, I think that this academy will be very important in our efforts towards diversity. And as far as the crime analysis piece, we rely very heavily on crime analysis for our policing. For our traffic enforcement, we overlay complaints with collisions and reckless driving to focus on where we do traffic stops. We do the same thing for our highest crime areas in the city so that we can better focus our efforts.
So KJ, I think having a culture of diversity and acceptance inside the police department, looking for officers that have a heart to police a diverse community, and then doubling down, because we know this from our interview and our hiring process, doubling down our social media efforts where people of all walks of life can see either someone like them in a uniform or that we're policing, and policing isn't negative. That law enforcement, you might attest to a negative connotation. Policing a community is very positive, so they can see themselves being involved in community engagement through our social media. We double down on that. Much like Richland, analytically, we review areas of the city called hotspots, where we can now direct our resources. We can't be everywhere in 39 square miles, 11 linear miles. It's a big city, but we can identify those problem-solving areas or those problem areas and put our resources into them.
And we share that information. So the analytical information, we do the same thing with the hotspots. We're sharing it back and forth so we can see where their hotspots are in relation to ours, and then who are the characters in those hotspots that we need to address. So recruiting is very much the same from Kennewick.
My name is Brian Newberry. I'm with Girl Scouts Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho. Thank you, Chiefs, for the great conversation. In fact, I just sent a note. We're headquartered out of Spokane. I just sent a note to all our chambers up there and said, you really need to copy this. So credit Tri-Cities for doing such a great way to do stuff. And honestly, in the homeless situation and the fentanyl situation of Spokane is so much worse up there than it is down here. So I would love to live down here. So realtors, I'll come talk to you. But I digress. My bigger question is, as an Air Force veteran, I'm really, really concerned right now with recruiting for the military right now, because it's not tomorrow or the next day, it's 10 to 15 years down the road where you really see the consequences of today. I would say it's the same thing for the cops. And Chief Clary, who was named a Women of Distinction here, one of 7 women throughout Eastern Washington, was leading up to it. Best and brightest, we heard it all day long. It's really hard to get that because the beat up on cops and because it's such a hard job. What other things do we need to do? I know we need you out on the streets. Do we need to flood the schools these days? What other things can we do? Because we're really going to suffer 10 years down the road if we don't get ahead of this. Because everyone wants to be a firefighter. We need everyone to want to be a cop, honestly. Thank you, Chiefs, again, for all you do.
We need every one of you to encourage your sons, daughters, cousins, friends, neighbors. Law enforcement is a noble profession. We are the best of the best, and we are not growing police officers in Minnesota somewhere and putting them into our communities. We're growing them right here, and they're in your house. You're raising them. Send them to us. We'll take good care of them.
Yeah, we've got a great thing going on here. It's really community support, and when we get folks from outside who look at our agencies, some of their questions revolve around what kind of community support you have. And I tell them all the time, get on social media, look at comments, have dialogue with business owners. It's really about that engagement and relationship, just like the chief talked about. A culture of policing is different than being, right, cops, and the heavy badge knuckle dragging days are gone. That's not, we're hiring smart cops. Any of our cops will tell you they would rather work short-staffed than with the wrong people. And you put a wrong person in that seat, and that's where you get into problems. So we're very picky on who we put in those seats, but we've got something special here, and it's really because of all of you, right? It really is. So thank you all.
I just add one thing, and keep supporting all those programs.
I was next.
Oh, you were? Okay, shut that off. Just please keep supporting those programs. SROs, these individual officer positions that we have that have these direct contact with our kids these days. It's super important to keep those things going. We're seeing it. We just put a full-time SRO back in the school in West, and it's paid dividends. The relationship with the children and that officer is amazing, but that will also give us that exposure of this is what a police officer looks like.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have nothing left to say now.
Really?
No way.
That's not true. I think, as has already been said, you know, our community, our officers are our best recruiters. We encourage them. We've involved them earlier on. They are the first oral board that an applicant will face is a panel of first-line officers. But we encourage them when they go out into the community to, you know, hand out flyers and talk to people about they need to talk about what a great job it is. And it is, you know, we are in a new era of where it's not, you know, no comment, we're not going to talk about that. We all know up here that it benefits us to be as transparent as possible. You are our community. There's no secrets to what we do. So I really encourage you all to recruit if you want to go on a ride along, communicate with us if you have, you know, if you have somebody in your house who's of age and is interested, have them come and ride, and our cops are happy to show them what it's all about and get a front row seat to the show.
Another neat thing I think all of our agencies now have are police foundations, where a lot of the community can get engaged with your own foundation, whether you know, if you live in Kennewick and you know somebody in Pasco and officers there support their foundation. I have board members from our police foundation here, and that is huge. A lot of people ask, what can we do to help you? What can we do? And we've done community events with barbecues, and they support internal health and wellness things where we don't have to pull from our city budgets. We're allowed to ask them to support those things. So support all of the foundations wherever you live. It's a huge thing for health and wellness and just overall police support.
Great. Well, we're getting toward the end here, and we'll go a lightning round of, is there anything for any of the four of you that you came here wanting to make sure that you talked about today that we didn't have a chance to cover?
I'm starting this time?
Whoever.
All right. No, I just want to say thank you for having us out. This is the first time I've ever done this in a public forum like this, and this is great. I like to share my experiences and stuff and how I see things, but without your guys' help and support, we wouldn't be able to do our job. So thank you guys for everything. Appreciate it. No, don't clap. Move on.
I think we pretty much said it all, but I really appreciate you having us, for the opportunity to come and speak, and for the dialogue and questions. I think these things are so important, and one of the most fun things that we get to do in the day.
I'm just going to double down on the appreciation for our partnerships with the law enforcement agencies in the area, our two county sheriff's departments, and hopefully you have the same confidence in our ability to police this whole region, the whole metro area together. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't give them an extra shout out. I know they gave me the accolades for a lot of the regional academy efforts, but it really takes all of our law enforcement agencies to come together to teach those recruits on a daily basis. And then just because a lot of my staff are here, our successes in Pasco, I get the accolades and I get to sit up here, but I have a great staff, great command staff, that are constantly looking into the future to prepare us for the next iteration of what policing looks like for you and your community. So thank you to my staff.
Yeah, thank you to the chamber, the businesses, the elected officials, all of our staff. Thank you all. It doesn't take a venue like this to reach out and have conversations with us. I'll give anybody my cell phone number. We're always open for conversations. So please don't be shy. Call, stop by, say hello. That's what this is about for us. We are in the people business. There is no other people business like ours. So this is what we do. So please make sure, reach out, call, talk, visit. That's what we want. So
Can I do one go back? So seriously, as we all have our community out, we've got National Night Out coming up first August 1. We all have coffee with the cops. Please come out and support us. Send your people to support us because our officers get their energy from knowing you support them. I guarantee you, over the last few years of this whole anti-thing across the country, law enforcement officers gave up and walked away. You did not see that in any of our police departments. Every night, our officers put that uniform on. When the rest of the country, when headline news was beating them up, they came to work every night and suited up only because they knew our city councils, they knew our legislators, and they knew you supported them.
the whole time. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Well, no, great message, and really sincerely thanks to all of you chiefs for being here with us today, for joining us in this really important conversation, and thanks to your departments for all they do in our communities. So please help me thank them for being here today.
Thank you all.